welcome to the first video in the editing bay. I wanted to make a different type of video today. Sitting at the computer, I don't do that a whole lot, but based on something that I think every one of us as a creator deals with if we're editing videos, and that's the amount of time in post that it takes to edit. I think a lot of us would enjoy a lot more time outside of the office. As a father of two myself, and my wife works a 9-to-5 job, it's really difficult for me to find time to edit. Those editing windows are quite small and quite infrequent. So I have to get as much done as possible while I'm in the editing bay. And over the last 3 or 4 years of doing this, I feel like I've come up with a lot of workflows and a lot of tips that have helped me really speed things up, and I can get a lot done in a small amount of time without cutting any corners, but just a few things that have gotten me there so that I can be as efficient as possible. So let's get into it. My number one tip is it starts at the shoot. Now, this might sound redundant. I've always just made it a practice to have my settings dialed in and my shot framed up before I hit record, and then I stop recording before I pull away from the shot. I didn't think too much of it at the time until I started working a lot with other people and getting back and editing their footage and realizing how much time that it actually saved me. Now, I do understand and I go through it as well, but not every shot can be that way, and I do understand that, but as a general practice, especially if you do a ton of documentary style deliverables, which I do, especially if you look at it from the big picture, if you're somebody who does something like weddings and you're doing 20 weddings a year, the amount of time and hours that you spend just trimming the beginning and the ends of clips to get them watchable is wild. And I didn't notice that until I started working with footage that was like that. So just by literally having your footage there where you can drag it and drop it on the timeline and just watch it back and trim the fat out of it, again, saves you hours and hours of times. And you got to think clicks equate to time. So if you're doing, say, 350 clips that you're going through, that could be upwards of 800 clicks that you're doing just to make it watchable, when if you just record, stop recording, and have your shot framed in as much as possible, you can get that down to literally to no clicks. You just drag and drop it on the timeline, watch it. But rant over, saves you a ton of time. My second and probably biggest tip is to look at your audio waveforms while you're editing. This really applies if you're doing a lot of multicam edits, if you're doing something like wedding vows or speeches where somebody's reacting or you're cutting between things. You want to get your L and J cuts in as soon as possible. So you want to have that audio overlapping. So if you're scrubbing through your footage and you find a reaction where you want to cut to, rather than sitting there and scrubbing through and waiting for that reaction to stop, all you have to do is glance down at your audio waveforms and see where the next line starts, cut there, and it's done, it's watchable. And then when you do your final watch through of it to make sure it's good, usually you don't have to do a whole lot of tweaking. Sometimes you do, maybe you want a little bit more or less of the reaction, but then you have it cut to exactly where you want. And again, you're spending way less time scrubbing through that, waiting for it to stop. You just glance down, boom. 9 times out of 10, if honestly, maybe even more, that reaction is ending by the time that next line starts. That's something that I found, and again, saves me a ton of time. My third tip is to use markers while you're editing, so later on when you're pulling your selects, you don't have to rewatch your footage back a second time. This is super common practice, but I also know a ton of people who don't do that, which is crazy to me. The least amount of rewatching of footage that you have to do is your biggest time saver. And it applies to every style of project that you do, whether it be weddings or commercial work or doc work. The last doc that I worked on, I had an hour and 20 minutes of footage, and I was able to cut that down to 20 minutes before even rewatching it back, and then was able to trim down even further. And again, that saved me tons of time. If I were to rewatch back through that later on and pull those out individually a second time, that's another hour and 20 minutes of my time that I would have spent doing that. So again, one of the biggest time savers that I've found. My fourth tip is to have an organized editing setup. There's things like loop decks out there, which I've heard are a huge time saver. I've never tried one, so that's probably something I'll be looking into soon, but I'm pretty comfortable with my setup right now. I use a Magic Mouse that's got the touch capabilities on it, as well as the pad on the MacBook simultaneously, and this allows me to be zooming in and out of the timeline, as well as scrubbing through the timeline all at the same time. Saves clicks, Saves me having to go to all the quick keys on the keyboard and just like minimizing the amount of movements that you have to do while you're editing. Saves me a ton of time. Tip number 5 is to have an organized timeline. It doesn't matter the type of project that I'm working on, but every single timeline is the same. Of course, depending on the size, you can add to a section or remove from a section, but it's the same every time. It helps me be able to sit down and just know where everything is without remembering how I did it this time. And it helps a lot with like muscle memory too. I have a viewing monitor right over here and my editing suite's up here. And a lot of the time I can just be looking down over here at my monitor and bumping things and tweaking things on the slider in real time without having to glance up the screen and see where my mouse is. Again, it saves on clicks, saves on movements and stuff, and it just makes everything a lot more intuitive, I find. And again, it's a huge time saver. My final bonus tip is a tool that came out recently called Plotline Pro. Plotline automatically transcribes, analyzes, and curates the most story-driven and impactful moments from your A-roll, saving you hours of manual work. If you haven't tried it out, I definitely recommend trying it. It's really cool. It's basically like having an assistant editor where you can tell it what you want and it does the grunt work for you and gets you to the point where you would have been, but saving you tons of time. Again, it's all about the time saving. So hopefully these tips can help some of you guys. If you're not doing these things already, I had to learn them all by trial and error myself. Hopefully I can help you guys skip the trial and error part and give you more time with your families and more time to get out and shoot, less time in the cave. And let me know down in the comments if this helps you at all. I'm like super interested to see how many people are already doing these things or how many people aren't. And yeah, hopefully that helps you guys. Till next time.